The unseen flow of clarity, the narrative of aging often centers on an inevitable, tragic decline, where the mind slowly loses its sharpness and the body its vigor. Yet this perspective is fundamentally flawed. Society suggests that cognitive fading is a natural consequence of time, leading many to accept brain fog and memory lapses as their unchangeable fate. However, the path to sustained mental acuity and boundless energy lies not in accepting deterioration, but in mastering the fundamental inputs that sustain life. By recognizing the profound connection between physical intake and mental clarity, one can unlock a reservoir of vitality that defies the conventional calendar. This journey explores a singular, overlooked element that serves as the conductor for all neural activity, a substance so foundational that its absence mimics dementia, yet its abundance restores the sharp focus of youth. Through the disciplined lens of Shaolin philosophy, the exploration reveals how stabilizing this vital essence transforms the aging process into an ascent toward wisdom rather than a descent into confusion. The stagnation of the mind, the brain operates as a high-performance engine that demands a precise, fluid environment to function. Yet modern habits often deprive it of its most critical fuel source. When the internal environment becomes stagnant, the neural pathways that facilitate memory and decision-making begin to misfire, creating the sensation of cognitive decline. This stagnation is not merely a biological accident, but the result of a disconnect between the body's needs and the mind's awareness. In the philosophy of self-mastery, the physical vessel cannot be separated from the consciousness it houses. When the vessel is neglected, the mind becomes turbid and heavy. The biological reality reinforces this ancient wisdom, as even mild dehydration or lack of fluid transport causes the brain tissue to physically shrink and pull away from the skull. This physical retraction triggers a cascade of inefficiency, slowing down processing speeds and making the retrieval of simple memories feel like wading through mud. The mechanism of this decline is often misunderstood as permanent damage when it is frequently a state of chronic deprivation. Neurons require a precise balance of electrolytes and fluid to transmit electrical signals. Without this medium, the signals become weak and fragmented. A person might experience this as the inability to recall a name or a sudden drop in focus during a conversation, attributing it to age rather than the immediate physiological state. The Shaolin perspective views this as a blockage of qi, where the life force cannot flow because the physical channels are dry and brittle. Just as a river cannot flow through a parched bed without turbulence, thoughts cannot flow through a dehydrated brain without resistance. The modern individual often ignores the thirst signal until it is too late, mistaking the body's cry for water as hunger or fatigue, further compounding the deficit. This state of chronic dehydration mimics the symptoms of dementia, leading to unnecessary fear and resignation among those over 50. The brain, in its desperate attempt to conserve resources, shuts down non-essential functions, reducing the vibrancy of sensory perception and the sharpness of recall. It creates a feedback loop where the individual feels tired, consumes stimulants like caffeine, which further dehydrate, and then feels more fogged, validating their belief in their own decline. This cycle is the common enemy of longevity, a self-imposed trap that mimics the ravages of time. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in perspective, viewing hydration not as a mundane chore, but as the primary act of maintaining the temple of the intellect. However, simply drinking water without intention or rhythm is insufficient, just as practicing martial arts movements without focus yields no power. The body has a limit to how much it can absorb at once. Flooding the system overwhelms the kidneys and flushes out essential minerals, leaving the cells just as thirsty as before. The limitation lies in the lack of discipline regarding how and when this nutrient is introduced. Many people consume large quantities of fluid during meals, which dilutes digestive enzymes, or drink ice-cold water that shocks the internal organs, disrupting the body's thermal balance. True restoration comes from understanding the biological rhythm and respecting the body's need for gradual, consistent replenishment. The concept of the monkey mind, unsettled, restless, and uncontrollable, is directly linked to this physiological unrest. When the brain is starved of its conductive medium, it becomes agitated, struggling to latch onto a single thought or intention. A person sitting down to work or meditate finds themselves bombarded by distractions, not because of a lack of willpower, but because the neural hardware is overheating. Providing the brain with adequate hydration cools this system, allowing the dust of the mind to settle. Clarity returns not through force, but through the restoration of natural balance, allowing the individual to witness their thoughts without being consumed by them. In a practical scenario, consider the individual who wakes up feeling groggy and immediately reaches for coffee. This person spends the morning fighting through a haze, forgetting keys, and feeling irritable, blaming a poor night's sleep. By the afternoon, a headache sets in and productivity collapses, reinforcing the narrative that they are getting too old for this pace. Contrast this with the individual who begins the day with warm water, gently waking the internal organs and flushing out the metabolic waste accumulated during sleep. This simple act of discipline sets a tone of fluidity for the day, ensuring that the brain starts with a full tank of resources. The difference in cognitive performance between these two scenarios is not genetic luck, but the result of a specific, repeatable protocol. It is essential to recognize that the body signals thirst long after the brain has already begun to suffer. Relying on the sensation of thirst is a reactive strategy that guarantees periods of suboptimal performance. The proactive approach, aligned with the principles of self-mastery, anticipates the need before the deficit occurs. This is the cultivation of awareness, where the individual listens to the subtle whispers of the body before they become screams of pain or confusion. By maintaining a state of optimal hydration, the person protects the structural integrity of the brain, preserving its volume and function well into later years. The skepticism surrounding such a simple solution is natural in a world that sells complex supplements and pharmaceutical interventions. People want a magic pill because it requires no effort, whereas proper hydration requires constant, low-level discipline. It is easy to dismiss water as too basic to be the secret to anti-aging. Yet nature often hides its most potent powers in the most elemental forms. The complexity lies not in the substance itself, but in the consistency of its application. To master one's intake is to master one's mind, proving that the foundation of brilliance is often just a matter of basic biology honored with consistency. What creates the fog that I have accepted as my reality? The essence of vitality, the nutrient in question, is water, but to view it merely as H2O is to miss the profound energetic role it plays in the human system. In the context of longevity and high performance, water is the vehicle for qi, the vital life force that animates the body. Without a fluid medium, energy cannot travel. It accumulates, stagnates, and eventually turns into illness or blockage. Science corroborates this by identifying water as the primary solvent for all biochemical reactions. It is the delivery system for oxygen and glucose to the brain and the waste removal system for toxic proteins that can lead to Alzheimer's. The brain is approximately 75% water, and even a 2% drop in hydration levels can trigger significant neurological impairment. The quality and temperature of the fluid consumed are just as critical as the quantity, a nuance often lost in modern nutritional advice. In the Shaolin tradition, avoiding cold water is a principle rooted in preserving the body's internal fire or digestive heat. Consuming ice-cold beverages requires the body to expend energy heating the liquid to body temperature, diverting resources away from cognitive tasks and digestion. Warm or room temperature water is assimilated more rapidly and with less stress on the system, allowing for immediate hydration of the tissues. This aligns with the biological understanding that vasoconstriction caused by cold can impede blood flow, whereas warmth encourages circulation and relaxation of the vascular system. Cellular hydration is distinct from simply drinking water. It is about getting the water inside the cells where it is needed. As people age, the cell membranes can become more rigid, making it harder for nutrients to enter and waste to exit. This leads to a condition where a person can drink gallons of water and still be dehydrated on a cellular level because the fluid simply passes through the system. To combat this, the water needs to be accompanied by electrolytes, minerals like sodium, potassium, and magnesium, which act as the keys to open the cell doors. A diet rich in mineral-dense foods or the addition of a pinch of natural salt to water can transform effective hydration, turning a passive activity into a therapeutic intervention. There is a counterintuitive aspect to hydration where overconsumption can be just as detrimental as underconsumption. Hyponatremia, or water intoxication, occurs when the balance of electrolytes is diluted to dangerous levels, causing cells to swell. This condition can lead to confusion, headaches, and even seizures, proving that balance is the ultimate law of health. The goal is not to flood the body, but to maintain a steady state of equilibrium. The master does not drown the plant. He waters it with precision. This reflects the middle way, avoiding the extremes of drought and flood to maintain a garden of health that supports a sharp, resilient mind. In the daily life of a senior professional or an active grandparent, the impact of this balance is immediate and tangible. During a long meeting or a complex task, the usual afternoon slump is often treated with sugar or caffeine, which provides a temporary spike followed by a crash. By substituting this with mineral-rich water and perhaps a moment of deep breathing, the brain receives a sustained source of energy. The neural firing rates remain high, allowing for complex problem-solving and emotional regulation. This is the difference between reacting to stress with frustration and responding with calm clarity. The connection between the gut and the brain serves as another critical pathway influenced by this vital nutrient. The gut produces a vast majority of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for mood and sleep. A dehydrated gut is a sluggish gut, leading to dysbiosis and inflammation that travels up the vagus nerve to the brain. By keeping the digestive tract lubricated and moving, the individual directly supports their mental health, reducing anxiety and promoting a sense of well-being. The physical clearing of waste equates to the mental clearing of negativity, reinforcing the unity of body and mind. Ultimately, water acts as the great conductor, facilitating the electrical storms that constitute our thoughts and memories. When the conductor is present and the medium is pure, the symphony of the mind plays without missing a note. The aging process tends to desensitize the thirst mechanism, making conscious protocols necessary. It is a shift from intuitive drinking to intentional fueling. This transition marks the move from a passive passenger in one's body to an active pilot, ensuring that the vessel remains airworthy and capable of reaching new heights. Am I nourishing my body or merely silencing its complaints? The discipline of consumption knowledge of a nutrient is useless without the discipline to apply it, and here the philosophy of self-cultivation becomes paramount. The modern world encourages mindless consumption, eating while watching screens, drinking while driving, and ignoring the sensory experience of nourishment. This disconnection prevents the body from preparing for intake. The cephalic phase of digestion, which starts in the brain, is skipped. To truly wake up the brain, the act of drinking water must be elevated to a practice of mindfulness. It involves pausing, feeling the temperature of the vessel, and consuming with gratitude and awareness. This signals the parasympathetic nervous system to activate, moving the body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. A practical protocol for the morning sets the trajectory for the entire day. Upon waking, before checking a phone or speaking to anyone, the individual should consume a large glass of warm water, perhaps with a squeeze of lemon or a pinch of salt. This acts as a signal to the body that the fast is over and the cleansing has begun. It is a ritual that prioritizes self-care over external demands. In the Shaolin approach, morning rituals are sacred. They're the foundation upon which the chaos of the day is managed. By conquering the morning with a healthy habit, The individual builds momentum that makes subsequent healthy choices easier. The challenge arises when the routine is disrupted by travel, stress, or social obligations. It is easy to maintain discipline in a quiet room, but the true test is maintaining it in the noise of the world. A person might find themselves at a social gathering where alcohol and sugary drinks are the norm. The pressure to conform is high, and the fear of missing out can override the commitment to health. However, the disciplined mind views this not as a restriction, but as a choice for vitality. Choosing water between alcoholic drinks or opting for tea is not an act of deprivation. It is an act of preservation. It protects the brain from the inflammation and dehydration that would otherwise steal the next day's clarity. Integrating this nutrient involves understanding the rhythm of the day. Front-loading hydration in the earlier part of the day ensures that the body is saturated when active, while tapering off in the evening prevents the disruption of sleep. Sleep is when the brain cleans itself through the glymphatic system, a process that relies heavily on fluid dynamics. If the bladder is too full, sleep is fragmented. If the body is too dry, the cleaning process is inefficient. Finding the sweet spot is a personal experiment, requiring the individual to observe their body's feedback loops and adjust accordingly. There's a moment in the mid-afternoon, often around 3 p.m., where the collective energy of a workplace or household dips. The common response is to seek stimulation. The master, however, seeks restoration. Instead of the sugary snack, the individual takes a few minutes to drink water and practice deep breathing. This combination oxygenates the blood and rehydrates the brain, providing a second wind that is clean and sustainable. It is a rejection of the crash and burn cycle in favor of a steady, enduring burn. This practice transforms the afternoon from struggle into a period of productive focus. The mental component of this discipline cannot be overstated. It is training the mind to value long-term well-being over short-term comfort. The monkey mind craves the sweet, the easy, and the stimulating. Taming it requires the gentle but firm redirection of attention back to what is essential. Each time the individual chooses water over a soda, they're doing a repetition in the gym of will. Over time, these repetitions build a mental fortitude that spills over into other areas of life. The discipline to hydrate becomes the discipline to focus, to listen, and to endure. Weaving this practice into the fabric of life turns the mundane into the meaningful. The water bottle becomes a tool of the trade, as essential as the laptop or the phone. It is a constant reminder of the commitment to stay fluid and clear. By honoring the body's need for this fundamental nutrient, the individual honors the potential of their own mind. The brain, feeling supported and safe, releases its hoarding mechanisms and allows for the free flow of creativity and memory. What do I trade my long-term clarity for short-term comfort? The unbroken flow, the journey toward healthy aging, is not about discovering a new, exotic chemical, but about returning to the source of life itself. The promise of waking up the brain and memory is fulfilled not by adding more complexity, but by removing the interference caused by neglect. Water, the simplest of elements, when applied with the wisdom of timing and the discipline of consistency, becomes the most potent elixir for longevity. It restores the volume of the brain, facilitates the firing of neurons, and clears the debris that clouds the mind. This approach demystifies the aging process, placing the power back into the hands of the individual. It is a rejection of the passive decline narrative and an embrace of active stewardship. By integrating the philosophy of mindfulness with the biology of hydration, the daily act of drinking becomes a meditation on vitality. The fear of memory loss and cognitive decline is replaced by a proactive confidence. The individual knows that they are providing their brain with the exact environment it needs to thrive. This realization shifts the emotional landscape from anxiety to empowerment. The brain is resilient. It wants to heal and function at its peak. It simply waits for the obstruction to be removed so that the river of thought can flow freely once more. The ultimate insight is that the separation between the physical body and the mental state is an illusion. To treat the mind, one must treat the body. To sharpen the memory, one must nourish the cells. The secret was never hidden. It was merely ignored in favor of more complicated answers. Wisdom, in the end, is the ability to recognize the profound power of the simple and the essential. As the body remains fluid, so too does the mind, adapting to the changes of age with grace and agility. The path forward is clear and accessible to everyone, regardless of their starting point. It begins with the next sip, taken not out of habit, but out of reverence for the life it sustains. This is the art of aging with energy, a practice that transforms the later years into a time of clarity, purpose, and unbroken flow. The mind, once watered and cared for, blooms with a vibrancy that defies the number of years, proving that vitality is a choice made one drop at a time. What essential truth am I overlooking because it seems too simple?